I am so privileged to be talking with Maddie today about the birth of her second daughter, Lou. She had a successful VBAC and felt so empowered in that choice and so empowered in the experience that she wanted to come on and share it with us today. We will get back right after this quick announcement to hear all about Maddie and Lou's story.
Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast. We are doctors Sarah and Alicia, maternity physicians and moms who have been through it all. We want to empower you with knowledge so you can have the best pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience you can.
She Found Health and She Found Motherhood is meant for general medical information only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This information does not apply to every situation. If you have questions or if you've received different advice, please contact your healthcare provider. Always seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The views expressed by She Found Health and She Found Motherhood and our guests are not representative of any of the institutions with which we are affiliated. Some of our podcast episodes are sponsored so that we can keep getting great info out there to you, our listeners. We only partner with companies that we truly believe in. Some of our links and suggestions may be affiliates, and we would appreciate you using them to help fund this important work. Now let's get to it.
Maddie, thank you so much for joining us today on the She Found Motherhood podcast. You have come to share your birth story, and you have two birth stories, I believe, and the second one being the one you were hoping to really share a little bit about, your VBAC birth story, which is a wonderful one to share about. So why don't we get started and you can just tell us a little bit about yourself to get going.
Sure. So I'm Maddie. I have two little girls. One is 2.5, and that's Frances, and the other one is Louise, and she's just 4.5 months old. And yeah, I live here in Victoria. And I wanted to talk about my VBAC with Louise because it was just when I almost didn't have it, but then uh, I did. And I was so happy, and it was just such a great experience. But maybe what I'll talk about first is my cesarean section with Frances and like
Go from
Louise.
there. You can see us, but we have a little Louise who's joining us. So she's
Yes,
having a little feed now, so may say a little hello here and there during the podcast, which would be wonderful.
almost certainly she will. She's just enjoying her lunch right now. So I got pregnant with Frances in 2018, and I'd had some fertility issues for a couple of years leading up to that. I didn't menstruate like 3 years. And so we were like seeing a fertility specialist and all kinds of stuff to see if we could get that going. And actually I remember it was like a week before I started getting my periods again. I had just spoken with the fertility doctor and we were about to like start. I can't remember now. It was a round of hormones to help me ovulate, and it was going to be like expensive, and I was really stressed out about it. But then I got my period. After a couple months of trying, I got pregnant with Frances, and we were so excited, my husband and I, and I had it in my head that I was going to have a vaginal birth. I was going to have no interventions. It was going to be, I don't know, I was like, my body can do this. I feel strong, I feel powerful. And then probably right around the 36-week mark, I had to go in to get a non-stress test and an ultrasound because she was quite a small baby. When she was born, she was 6 pounds, 5 ounces. So she's kind of petite. But anyways, when they were doing that test and that ultrasound, they were like, oh, your baby's fine. But by the way, she's breech. And so I was so relieved that she was healthy that I didn't really think about the fact that she was breech. But then, upon further discussion with my doctor, she was like, well, you probably have to have a C-section. I actually got really disappointed about that I had to have a C-section when I found out. And I tried everything to get her out of the breech position. And I think I did like acupuncture and that moxibustion, which I just remember like sitting on the couch with my husband burning incense by my toe to try to turn the babies. That didn't work. And I can't remember what it's called now. ECV?
Yeah, external cephalic version.
Yeah, we went and did one of those shortly before I had my C-section scheduled to see if maybe we could get her, if we could flip her around. That was kind of a wild, I forget sometimes that we did that, but that was a pretty wild experience in and of itself. Like you have to go into the OR and you're all hooked up to IVs and everything. I felt like I was going in for a C-section. And then the doctor was really great, but he just couldn't get her. Her head was stuck right up near my ribs and he couldn't flip her around. We were like, oh, it's going to be a C-section, which actually a planned C-section, it was a very kind of a relaxing way to have a baby. Like I remember the morning that we went in so well. First thing in the morning, section, and my husband and I like drove to the hospital, kind of hung out, watched some movies, and then the time got pushed back a bit because they had a few emergency C-sections to do that day. But anyways, at around like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, went into the OR and chatted with the anesthetist for a while, and then I had my baby. It was really wonderful. I still remember so clearly seeing the doctor pull her out and looking at her like angry little red face, and then and then the nurse going, "She's peeing," because like, she peed all over the doctor, and it was great. And then I had my baby, and it was wonderful. But I didn't love the recovery from the C-section, and so when I got pregnant with Louise, which was a total surprise to me. I'd figured because it took a while to get pregnant with Francis that it was going to take a while with Louise too. And yeah, I guess it was right around last October, I missed a period and was like, oh, but it's probably nothing. My cycles are irregular. And my husband was like, well, you should probably just take a pregnancy test just in case. Anyways, I was pregnant. But I was actually talking on the phone with my sisters when I took the test because I was so sure that I wasn't pregnant that I was, well, it's not, whatever. Anyways, I was. I don't remember where I was going with this. Oh, yeah. So, anyways, the C-section was fine, but the recovery, I didn't love it. And I just couldn't imagine having a very, very busy toddler and also having to be in recovery from a surgery. So I really wanted to have a vaginal birth this time. So I did a bunch of research on VBACs, and I listened to your podcast, which was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I decided I was like pretty comfortable with it, but I still scheduled myself for a C-section for a couple days after my due date, like just in case, because I didn't want to go too much over. With Louise, the pregnancy was pretty good. Like she was a nice big baby. She grew really well. I had whatever, the first trimester was shitty. Lots of nausea. And then I got a lot of sciatic pain in just basically almost through the whole thing. Terrible reflux, which went through the whole pregnancy. But other than that, like she was fine, was mostly okay. But the closer I got to the due date, I was like, okay, like I really want this baby. I really want to have this vaginal birth. And so I started doing things like I don't know, prenatal yoga, where I was like trying to encourage her to descend. And I started eating dates. Like it was like I was eating like, I don't know, 7 or 8 dates a day, which was fine because I really like them. And I did acupuncture, and what else was I doing to try and get her down? Oh, sitting on an exercise ball, curb walk, like everything. I started like 36 or 37 weeks. I was just like every single thing I could think of to do to get the baby, to get her to come, I was doing. I kind of had this feeling that it wasn't going to work, which maybe apparently my mom informs me that me and my sisters were all really, really overdue. And I don't know when Frances would have been born if we hadn't had a C-section with her. And so I was like, oh, I think that I'm probably someone who just carries babies for a really long time with no reason to think this, but and so I bet you she's not going to come, but I'm still going to do all this stuff. Anyways, my C-section was booked for July 16th. And on July 15th this year, she still wasn't there. Like Louise still hadn't come. I was like, all right, okay. I gave it my best shot. I did everything I could. Oh, the other thing I did was that mile circuit. Like I really did everything that I could think.
Did you do cervical sweeps at all?
Yes. And I had a sweep every doctor, I think starting at around 37 weeks, every doctor's appointment that I had with my maternity dog, I got her to do a sweep because I was like, I want this baby. And the last appointment that I'd had, which would have been just about a week before Lou was born, she was like, well, you're 1 centimeter dilated. It's looking a little soft. Anyways, I just wasn't thinking that she was going to come. So it's the 15th and my C-section scheduled for the next day. And I was just like positive that I was going to have a C-section now. And that day I went like a really big walk I don't know why I walked to the bank. Anyways, I went on this like huge walk to get to the bank on the other side of town. Oh, because I had to open up a new bank account. Anyways, I was standing there in line at the bank. I was like, oh, I really feel awful. Like maybe I overdid it on that walk a little bit. I don't feel very good. And I got home and I took it easy for the rest of the day. And then my husband and I took our toddler to Beacon Hill Park and we went out for ice cream and just kind of, and then we ordered dinner. Anyways, we were in the middle of dinner from this restaurant we really like. We started eating it, and then About halfway through, I was like, I don't think I can finish this. Something feels weird. Something feels wrong. Normally, I have no problem polishing off this. It's like my favorite thing to get from this place. And then we were calling my mom on FaceTime so we could talk to her so she could see Frances and talk to her before I go in to have my C-section to have my baby. Like, oh, like, are you all ready for your section tomorrow? You're going to have your baby tomorrow? I was like, yeah. And then my stomach just started to hurt. Like I started getting what felt like more than Braxton Hicks contractions. And so we're sort of still talking. And I was like, except mom, I think I might be going into labor right now. She was like, well, what's happening? So I described like these like horrible stomach cramps and also like really bad back cramps. She's like, yeah, Maddie, like it sounds like you're in labor. It's like, okay, maybe, but I'm probably not. And I remember telling my husband, like, I might be in labor, but I don't think so. Probably not. We just like continued on with our pooping. Oh, Louise. I think she's just farting. Sorry.
Louise is passing some gas, everybody. We'll keep you all up to date.
So I don't even know, to be honest. I was like, I'm no. Like the plan now is that I'm gonna have a C-section, so I'm not in labor. So I gave my daughter her bath. Like after dinner, I go and give her a bath, in which she pooped in the bath, which was pretty gross. And I'm like cleaning that up, and I'm also now like I was pretty sure at this point. Oh, my doorbell. Pretty sure I'm in labor. So anyways, I'm cleaning up the bath, cleaning up a toddler, now like having contractions. My husband was like, maybe you should go lie down. I was like, yeah. So I called it my doula and my maternity doc as well. And it gave me the rundown. Like, yeah, it sounds like you're in labor. Come in. I can't remember what the spacing is for contractions, but when you hit that like special
Magic
certain
number. Yeah.
magic number, like maybe go to the hospital. We went to bed, or I tried to go to bed for a little bit. And at around midnight, I got up and I was like really in labor. I was having a horrible pain. So I got up and I went into the living room, and I thought I would just let my husband sleep for a little while longer because I figured he'd probably have a long night ahead of him. And so I'm like on my hands and knees in the living room here. We're just trying to feel better. I'm on the medicine ball, or not the medicine ball, the exercise ball. And finally, at around 1, I got my husband up and told him to call his mom, who was going to come and look after Frances. My mother-in-law came over and got to witness me full out, like beast mode on the living room floor for a little while. And then we drove to the hospital. And when we got there, my husband works for the health authority. So we parked at staff parking, which was pretty far away from the doors. I wasn't really thinking. I should have just asked him to drop me off at the front, but anyways, I did. Anyways, we got into the hospital, and by the time I got there, I was 4 centimeters dilated. And so with Frances, before I found out I had to have my C-section, like I said before, I was like, no interventions. I'm just going to do it. It's going to be great. But I was in so much pain when we got to the hospital. Like when I was actually in labor, I was like, I want an epidural now. And I talked with my husband and my doula about this before. And I was like, if I say I want an epidural, like don't question me. I definitely want it. Anyways, I really did want it. So we got there, but the anesthetist was doing an emergency C-section. So she was going to be a little while. So I labored for a while at the hospital. I tried the gas, but it made me throw up. So that wasn't great. I found out later I guess when I was talking later, I found out I had back labor, which would explain why. Because I felt what I'd heard about contractions was that you get a little break in between. But I never felt like I got a break. And I was like, what is this? Anyways, the anesthetist finally came to give me my C-section, or sorry, what do you call it? My epidural. I remember her, you have to give informed consent. So she's talking through the risks. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Yes, I agree. I consent. Just giving the thing. The only one that gave me pause was when she told me that it might not work. I was like, oh my God. But once I had the epidural, it's great. I had a little nap, and the doctor woke me up at around 7 a.m. because I guess my contractions had started slowing down. And then when they checked me, I was 10 centimeters or almost 10 centimeters dilated. She was like, so do you want to push? And I was like, can I push? Okay. And so I started pushing it around 7. And I don't know, I loved pushing. I pushed for an hour. I thought it was great. It felt like really empowering. It was, I don't know, I guess I kind of loved that, like, I'd had this baby in me for so long, and now I was doing something that I could actually, like, get her out, and I was gonna be able to see her, and I guess because I had a great epidural, it wasn't painful, it just felt, like, really yeah, like I could do something to bring her out and bring her into the world. And I remember my husband, so sweet. He was just he was watching, he wanted to see her come out. And so I could just hear him like when he saw her head, he'd be like, "Oh wow, oh wow." He just kept saying, "Oh wow." I didn't want to see, but I don't know. It was just so nice to hear. It was so nice to hear him getting so excited to see her. And I just like, kind of couldn't believe it when she was born. Like after an hour, she squeezed her out. Oh, the other great thing was that my maternity doctor showed up. Like her shifts started just like in the last 20 minutes of my pushing. So she actually got to catch Louise, which was really special, I thought, because she was also my maternity doc for Francis.
Super special. It's special
I
on
know.
both ends.
Oh,
I love being there for my patients. Yeah.
oh, it was just like I was so happy. The other thing that I loved actually about pushing is I remember at one point I looked around the room and except for my husband, it was all women. And I was like, this like I just love that. Like there was me and there was the nurses and my doctor, my doula, and I knew I was having a little girl and it just felt like not just sound sappy, but it sounded kind of sacred. Like it was just awesome. I loved it. And then yeah, she came out and she was a surprisingly big baby. Like I mentioned before, Frances was quite small. She was like a 6 pound, 5 ounce baby, and Louise was a nice 8 pound girl, which caught us all by surprise, actually. And yeah, I don't know. It was just great. I even just love thinking about my birth experience with her. Like when I think that I get it's such like a little thrill. It was fantastic. And so one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it is because if somebody's thinking about a VBAC, if it's, if it's safe or whatever for them, oh, it was just such a great experience. It was so different. I mean, my birth with my older daughter was wonderful too, but I'm so glad. I'm really, really glad that I got to experience vaginal birth with, yeah, with Louise.
It sounds like you were saying having a vaginal delivery was something that was really important to you throughout both pregnancies, right? And for some women, that is 100% the case. For others, it's less. So for those who really do want to experience a vaginal delivery, trying for a VBAC, as you said, as long as it's safe, is a really great thing. And it's a really great option. And I think if people really desperately want a vaginal birth or to at least try and they don't, then they always wonder. Whereas for other
Yeah.
people, you know what? I've had a C-section. I don't need to have a vaginal delivery. I'm fine having another cesarean. Great, right? More power to them. And so everybody's different. And I think it's really important to listen to ourselves and our inner self when we're making those decisions, as opposed to the more external voices. Because there's a lot of people out there who will say one thing or the other, but they can't really, they don't know you and who you are and what you really value.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember when I first started telling people I was going to try for a VBAC, there was quite a few people who were like, "Oh, that seems really dangerous. Like, are you sure?" Yes, like I'm a lawyer and I'm like very risk adverse. Like, and so I was like, yes, like thought about it and I like considered all the risks and I this is how I want to do it, but I have a backup plan. So I guess all that to say, just yeah, you are making some fun noises right now. But it is important to just listen to yourself and not what everyone around you is saying. I was really happy that the care providers that I had were all very supportive of a VBAC. I remember thinking, this probably sounds horrible, but when I went and talked to the obstetrician about it, and I was like, "Oh, she's probably gonna try and talk me out of it." Like, I just had this feeling. I was like, "I bet you she's gonna try and talk me out of it." But I chatted with her, sort of explaining how I was feeling, and I guess she whatever doctors do, she considered my file, and she's like, "Yeah, it sounds like you're a good candidate. Like, you should just go for it." That's great. Yeah, I felt really supported in the decision, which I think also really helped.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to recognize. We, as physicians, as maternity providers, as care provider, we want to support people in their decisions, but we need to make sure they understand the risks and the benefits of those decisions. And so that's the lens that we're seeing everything through, is to present the information and the data. And as long as safety is not a big issue, which sometimes those decisions are not necessarily the safest decision, but we want to support you to have the birth that you want to have within the realities of your situation. And that's going to be different for everybody. But yeah, so I'm glad you had that experience, because that is what we all strive for, is a safe experience that kind of meets your goals and your own personal kind of value.
Mm.
It's wonderful to hear. How did the postpartum period go for you?
With with Frances, postpartum it was hard because she was not I found breastfeeding very difficult with her. And breastfeeding was another one of those things that I really it was really important to me that I at least try. I really wanted to do it for lots of reasons. But she was small, like I mentioned, and it was hard. She wasn't a great eater and had a lot of nipple pain, like just blisters and like open blisters. And it was just, and they, that thing where they turn white.
Raynaud's.
Yeah, it was brutal. Like I remember it felt like excruciating every time she latched on. So but I did a lot of work to work on nursing with her. And eventually she got the hang of it and she started gaining weight because that was the other issue with Frances is she wasn't gaining weight very well. And so that when you're like first time mom, that was just unbelievably stressful because you're like, oh my God, my baby is going to die. Like I need to feed her. But we worked through it. And I don't know if it's just that her mouth grew or my body. I don't know what happened, but eventually we got the hang of breastfeeding and things were really good after that. That was the big, huge stressor that I remember from postpartum with Frances. And then with Louise, postpartum, it's a bit of a blur, to be honest. I had her right in the middle of the summer when it was so hot and we weren't sleeping. And I just remember sitting in my living room and nursing her. She was a much better eater, though I still had nipple pain with her, but when she got a little bit bigger, it went away. I think the hardest thing about postpartum with in this pregnancy was that I had a toddler. And I found myself at first really comparing the like what was I doing with Frances at X weeks? What am I doing with Louise? It felt kind of felt inadequate, to be honest, in terms of what I was doing with my older child and also just like how I was caring for my new baby. Because I don't have as much time this time around with Louise to be doing whatever all the fabulous things I was doing with Frances when she was a newborn. Also, there was no pandemic when Frances was born. So that
Minor
makes
detail there.
some things are not as open as they were the first time around. But actually that has been a bit of a challenge, even still, just to think about, when with Frances, I was traveling and going to groups and I was like out all the time and I was doing all kinds of stuff. And I don't do as much of that with Louise. I spend a lot more time at home, I don't know, looking at her, like cuddling her, or then when my older daughter's home, like sort of trying to manage.
I have a question about that, actually.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe you're like me, a bit of an A-type personality. From first being busy, doing lots of activities, spending lots of time on the go, to
Yeah.
second being a much more quiet time. I mean, take away the toddler piece, but when you have time, probably a little bit more quiet and homebody-ish.
Yeah.
Like, is that a bad difference, a good difference, or just a different difference?
I think it's just different. I don't think it's necessarily bad or good. I think maybe if there hadn't been a pandemic, I might have said it was bad because before I was just like, even just like in my life, I was like always out, always doing things. But then you like had this time where you had to do nothing. And so you kind of got good at it. And now, yeah, I would say it's just different. Instead of going to like a million baby groups or like going to the pool all the time or like at 8 billion mom and baby exercise classes, I don't know, we go for a lot of walks and we hang out at home. And it is nice. It is really nice to like enjoy the time that you have at home to just kind of like look at your baby. Like I don't think I'm gonna have another baby. And so yeah, it's like maybe maybe this is probably my only baby that I'm gonna have. So just to give yourself space to sort of enjoy that is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably answer, but I'd say they're just different because I remember a lot of joy. I remember getting a lot of joy out of a lot of the stuff I did with Fran. Like I loved the baby groups and I had a lot of fun and I made some really good friends, which I'm not doing. I guess I already made my mom friends, so I guess but I would just carry those ones over into this baby period. But there's a lot of joy from just being at home too, and it's really relaxing. Like I'm also sort of recognizing that like I have a very stressful job and it's going to when this year is done and my mat leave is up, like my life is going to get very stressful and busy again. So like if I have a year where the biggest thing I have to do in a day is fold the laundry or make cookies, that's not too bad.
Right. And it probably makes a difference being the second baby as opposed to the first, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, you have those mom friends already. You have a little bit of a core kind of group that you can lean on versus in your first pregnancy, you probably needed those groups to kind of socialize and what's normal? What should I be expecting? Is this normal or not? Right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and it is I remember just sort of coming to that realization with my first baby, was like, "Oh my god, like, I remember thinking, like, I need to be around just, like, big groups of women who get it. I loved it, like, I loved going to those groups, I loved talking to people who were going through the exact same thing as me. It was fantastic, and I guess, yeah, now I can still do that, it's just that they're not big groups anymore. It's just like 1 or 2 people that I've met, and they'll come over for coffee instead of me going out to a group or something, and we still talk about how our babies are sleeping and how we're exhausted or whatever.
Okay, so now to our questions. What was the biggest thing that surprised you through your journey?
You know what I guess surprised me maybe the most? Well, actually, I should say the first thing that really surprised me is this sounds so ridiculous, but, like, how much you love your babies. I didn't I've never loved anything or anyone as much as I love my kids. I didn't know that there was, like, a that you could feel that way about someone. That like, to be honest, that's probably the biggest surprise, and it's also surprising how much you change as a person, I feel, once you have your kids. I guess I don't know if it's a surprise, but the other thing is just, like, how you can't really plan for anything. I'm a planner, and I like to think I'm in control, and, like, to an extent you can try to control things, you can try to sort of prepare, but at the end of the day, like, who knows? You're gonna have a baby, your pregnancy is gonna go how it's gonna go, and the baby will come out of your body in some fashion, but you can't necessarily control it. I
Yeah.
think that's yeah.
So if you had a piece of advice or something that you would recommend to people from your experience, something that you wish you had known before, or some way that you would have prepared differently, what would you say to people?
I don't know if there's any way that someone can actually take this piece of advice, but for my first pregnancy, I kind of wish that I had known how stressful it was gonna be to have a newborn. How much you didn't actually have to stress about it, if that makes sense. Like, I can just remember with my first child, Googling just, I don't know, like, the color of her poo. I actually have a very, like, clear memory of just, like, being like, "Baby poo, like, I need to look at pictures of what's normal." Just freaking out about it. And first of all, that's not something I ever thought that I would be stressed out about, but I was. But I also wish, like, somebody could have told me, like, You're gonna freak out about the color of your baby's poo, don't worry. It's probably fine. Public health gave you a little swatch that shows you what's extremely dangerous, and other than that, you should probably be fine." And so I actually do remember laughing to myself with Louise, because she had, like, this obscene green poo one day, and I was like, "It's probably fine." And it was fine. Like
Yeah, it is. And it is interesting how much experience comes into play with that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think those second babies, even if they're more challenging babies, we often, as parents, are much more relaxed
Yeah.
around them and with them. But those first ones they are anxiety provoking, even to those who don't have much anxiety.
Right?
You just don't know what you don't know, but you know, want to know everything, right?
Yeah. You're like, "I could probably learn everything about this. I just need to spend enough time, like, whatever, Googling it." And to your point, that's actually so true, because Francis was a very, like, in retrospect, a very easy baby. And this one is not. But I'm just, like, not as stressed out about her because we've been through it before. And then the other piece of advice related to what we were talking about before, like, trying to find, a community. Again, in my first pregnancy, I remember thinking, like, mom and baby groups, I'm not gonna do that. That doesn't seem like it's for me." And then I went to one and was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." And it was amazing for a lot of reasons. Like, I got to meet people, I got to talk about my experience, and something that I found really helpful was it gave a little bit of structure to my days and my weeks. Like, I knew that on whatever Tuesdays, I had this thing that I really liked to do, and I was gonna go do it, and it was something I had to get out of the house to do. And so, yeah, I don't know, if you're pregnant or you're about to have a baby and you're someone who draws comfort from having a bit of structure, I don't know. It's worth it. It's worth it to sign up for something, or just try and find something that you feel like you need to go and do.
Or these days, maybe setting up a regular meetup time with a friend, right? You
Yeah,
going for a walk
exactly.
together or just going for coffee together or having a standing kind of quote unquote mummy play date together.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
that adds that structure in our still COVID time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, just having something to put in your calendar. Like today, I had this to put in my calendar and I was very happy about that.
Well, me too. Well, that's awesome. Hey, Miss Lou, thank you for joining us today. And thank your mom too. Maddie, it was a pleasure talking with you.
Well, thank you. This was a lot of fun. Thank you
So
so
much
much.
fun. Yeah, anytime. Lou, you did a great job. A couple of little farts, and that's all.
She did amazing. You did great. She's totally captivated by you right now.
These kids are so used to Zoom time now, hey?
Yeah, exactly. She was like, "Oh, you must be a relative."
The long lost auntie. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website at www.shefoundhealth.ca and to sign up for our community for weekly bump blasts. Make sure to check us out on Instagram or Facebook at she.found.motherhood and head on over to your favorite podcast app and leave a review and a 5-star rating. If you enjoyed this podcast, take a pic of yourself listening to it and share it on social. Make sure to tag us on it so we know to keep making them.